what did you think of Dan Quinn and Adam Peters' opening press conference?
I think it was to be expected for a pre-camp press conference. There was very little news out of it. They said pretty much what we all expected them to say. You and I had this discussion afterward. I was a little surprised it took as long as it did to get to a Brandon Ayuk question, since that was seemingly a big deal like a week ago. But yeah, I mean, I really thought, their answer to that, and Adam Peters saying, we handled it internally and we're not really concerned with it beyond that. And their update on Johnny Newton, just saying that, he's progressing well. We expect to, have him back sooner rather than later. I really thought those were the only two notable nuggets to come out of it. The team is sticking with their narrative of a quarterback competition, so to speak, but I think we all know where this is headed and what it really is. So yeah, I mean, it was boring, but I think boring on a good level at this point, and especially for this team.
Do you think it's going to change?
Do I think it's going to change?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to get much more exciting with those two guys. I think they
intentionally want to keep
Adam
it as
doesn't like to talk as much.
possible.
Yeah, Adam don't like to talk as much, but I think Dan likes to talk, but they don't like to give you much information.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's interesting too is I think DQ is like a kind of an emotional dude, whereas Peters seems very reserved. You know what I mean? Like Peters doesn't like to show you what he's thinking, whereas DQ a little bit kind of puts his heart on his chest and wants to kick ass and like operates with this energy. And I do think maybe those two play off one another pretty well.
They do. I think collectively they're not going to provide you much of any information in these press conferences. Now, they're not trying to like go out of their way to evade questions or mislead.
Right. Right.
But, they, like you said with Adam, he keeps his cards close. So they're very nice to media. I do think they show their very different personalities in these press conferences, but, they're not just going to give you these, headline drawing sound bites, and nor should they, but,
honestly, when Ron did it, when Ron would do that, he kind of like made a mistake to do it. And I think
it was unintentional, usually.
And then got mad at y'all because he made the mistake.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of which, he was just on Adam's podcast, so I was watching that.
I saw that. Apparently he would take Jayden Daniels. That's great.
Yeah, along with 30 other teams.
Right. So hearing from them today, my timeline with the Jayden stuff, one, they're right that it doesn't really make a big difference. But two, I think we see a ton of him get work against the Jets. I don't know how much we see him actually play in a noon Saturday preseason game. I think he gets all the work against the Dolphins. Maybe not all, but all the first team work against the Dolphins in the practice. I think we actually see him on the field against the Dolphins in the preseason game. And that's it. And I don't know if they make the formal announcement after that, or even if they wait till after the final preseason against the Pats. But I think that's kind of where the window opens, is after the Dolphins game, whatever week of August that would be, like the August 20th or so.
Yeah, I think he's the number 2 overall pick, and he's going to be the starting quarterback.
I agree with you.
I think all this is silly. I mean, I get sort of why they do this, but like, come on, we know we're all playing this silly game, and it's like, do we really have to go through these motions again? Like, you didn't draft him number 2 overall to make Marcus Mariota your starter. Let's be real. Right. But yeah, I think as far as, any sort of public announcement, I'm with you. I could see it. If they want to announce after the second preseason game, that would make the most sense. That way you can bench him for the third one and get him ready for the opener.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
I also told JP they can just not say he's a starter, so you don't have to talk about all the Ayuk stuff right now.
There is that. But everybody seems to want a public announcement, I'm like, I didn't know that was necessary, but okay. Yeah.
Like, does Andy Reid have to come out and say Mahomes is the starter?
Never.
Let's make it a more reasonable spot. Like, does even Daboll have to say Danny Dimes is the starter? They went out and signed Drew Lock.
Yeah, but Danny Dimes is the starter if he's healthy.
Right. I think a lot of these.
And if they were to start Drew Lock, they're not going to come out and say, oh, we made Drew Lock our starter. Daniel's our starter, but Drew Lock is going to play because he's not healthy.
Right.
Right.
Let's go to something that is maybe a little more off the radar than the quarterback, because that's all anybody wants to talk about. This D-line, we heard so much about them for so long and then didn't really see them deliver on it. Allen and Payne have had good years. Sweat was largely good, dealt with some injuries, never really popped. Chase was a roller coaster with far more downs than ups. I contend that this group now, with the DNs they have, has a higher floor than it did before, but not necessarily a higher ceiling. Where do you land with kind of the Armstrong, Farrell, Fowler, and then however else they fill that in?
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. Like, I mean, in some ways, what's the point of a higher ceiling if you never come close to it? So I think having a higher floor is better. But I like the dynamic of these guys. I mean, we'll see how it all pans out. Like when the games start, they haven't even put pads on yet. So right now on paper, it looks good. And theoretically, you think it would, mesh better than maybe, 4 first-round picks up front. But, I don't think the ends have the natural talent that Sweat and Chase have and ultimately could have if they played to their potential. And I don't want to insinuate that they were going out of the way to not play to their potential. I think there were extenuating circumstances, but I always thought that line played the best when it was 3 of them, when it was Payne, Sweat, and John Allen. So you never really, as you said, you never really got to see what they could truly do if all 4 played in unison. I think you could see this group play in unison more and play off of each other more. So I think in a lot of ways they could be more effective because of that. But we'll see. I mean, I think, in my mind, the first gauge of how they look will really be the first joint training camp practice. I always think that the defense always comes away looking better than the offense in training camp anyway. But to see him go against another offense, I think that'll be interesting.
What's wild though is last year in Baltimore, we thought they looked pretty good.
Yeah, we did.
If you look at the
I actually thought the line did. I thought those joint training camp practices actually, that was like when you first started to see some of the holes across the defense, mainly in the secondary. Because up until then, the secondary looked pretty solid. I mean, they were winning most of camps. I mean, Amino Forbes especially looked legit. You put them up against their receivers, and it's not as solid.
Do you think?
So that's why
point,
I think this.
Yeah, I mean, totally. They're going to be down in Miami, and Hill and Waddle are going to be on the other side. They're going to go to the Jets with Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers throwing the rock. Clearly, this secondary was bad last year. We don't need to try to mince words on that. How much do you think the Dan Quinn, Joe Witt scheme coaching strategy can change things?
You hope a lot. I mean, that's the group that. I mean, one of the groups that I'm really, really interested in, just because I do think they have pieces back there, but how do they envision them all fitting? I mean, I think Sainer still is their starting nickel, which I think is a true starting position anymore. And, they have the addition of Chin, you got St. Juice back there, but how do they really envision that group unfolding? That's a big unknown to me. And after the way they performed last year with, repeated mistakes week after week, I mean, I'm very curious to see how that group looks, how they play together, how much the scheme sort of exploits the talents each player has. So yeah, you hope it's a lot better than last year. They needed to be better than last year.
Yeah.
When he made the comment that they try to find out what somebody does good and focus on that, how did that sound to you? Because I know all these other coaches used to talk about how bad what people couldn't do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a stark difference from the last 4 years. To me, that sounded like what every coach says in training camp, if I'm being honest. They all say we want to do what our players do best. But, I will say I feel like this group has adhered more to what they've said publicly than maybe the previous regime, especially with like how they built the roster. They said they want to build through the draft. They actually have laid a foundation to be able to do that. They've talked about having these veteran leaders to kind of set the tone. They have a group that is actually capable of doing that. We'll see if they're preaching about player development and teaching is real over these next couple of years. We'll see if these guys truly develop under these coaches.
Right.
So as far as the other stuff, I mean, I think it's still to be determined, but I do think they've been fairly honest. But yeah, I think playing to a player's skill set it's like when coaches come out and say, yeah, we want a really attacking offense and high scoring.
Totally.
Then, well, yeah, no crap. Like,
I mean, even right now, they're like, oh, we want to be physical and attack and play fast. Like, who doesn't?
Right. Right, exactly.
I do think what I like a lot is Quinn's track record. And I think we need to include Joe Witt in the conversation with it. But like Quinn and Witt now have an established track record of, if you look at what Witt did as the passing game coordinator defensively in Dallas, okay, Trayvon Diggs, sure, he popped. But he's kind of a big name player that not that his level of success was expected, but it wasn't a shock. To follow that up with Deron Bland popping like that was a shock. And for that to happen 2 years in a row with two different players after an injury, the players always deserve the most credit. But you also got to think about the coach in that situation.
Right.
And then
I totally.
Micah Parsons is an all-world talent, but they also use him everywhere. Yeah. And I think they don't have a talent like that here at this point, but maybe you could get more out of some of the people that are here by giving them different options. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I look at Cliff and Kyler's rookie year and how they created an offense for him. And I just find those things really encouraging with this staff.
Yep. I agree totally. And like I said, I think it goes both ways. I think you need the players who have the talent and have the openness to be coached and to have teachers and coaches and to learn from veterans who are open to that. But you also need the right coaches who can get through to the players who know how to push the right buttons, how to help them learn in ways specific to each player. So I agree with you in that Quinn and Witt, just in their experience together at multiple spots and the results they've had at each spot, bode well. You hope they can create the same thing here. I feel like I have the most confidence in this group than any other I've had,
right?
Probably over the last 10 years. But yeah, a lot to be determined still.
Hey, I wanted to switch gears real quick. We're talking with our friend Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post. You can give her a follow at Nicki Jhabvala, NICKIJHABVALA. Did I get that right? Because I just did that from memory.
You did. I'm impressed.
Wow. All right. I know Maskey has been on it. I don't know if you've been working with him on it. I want to get into this in our next segment because it's a big deal and it's coming. In The Matrix, when Keanu Reeves, Neo, is fighting the secret agent dude, and he says, do you hear that? That's the sound of inevitability. The inevitability in the NFL is getting to 18 games and pushing the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. But, Nicki, the Post has reported, I believe at least first, if not exclusively, kind of that the negotiations are ramping up on this.
Yeah, we had a meeting with Lloyd Howell, the executive director of the NFL Players Association, yesterday afternoon, which was great. It was, hour-long conversation on an array of topics. And, Mark's, been in on all of this, and he asked about the prospect of an 18th game, which would require, agreement from both the PA and the league because the CBA only allows for 17 games right now. And he said that, yeah, there have been high-level discussions that have started, which, yes, maybe it's inevitable, but it's still very interesting that they've started those discussions. And Roger Goodell was, I think it was at the Sun Valley Conference in Idaho, where he basically, I don't know if he framed it as an inevitability, but, it is something that the league wants, obviously. Another game is more money on every level,
Right.
TV, ads, ticket sales, everything. The players, if there are concerns, I mean, those are obvious too, the health of players and, the extra toll it takes on another game and, the length of the season. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many layers to that conversation, but they have started discussions and, they'll start to peel them back. But yeah, it's a complicated one too. It's really interesting to hear Lloyd Howell talk about it and all the pieces that go into it.
I can tell you this, Lloyd is going, if they're going to be doing it with Lloyd, they're going to be giving those players a lot more money. Because he believes he knows the money. He knows
he's
the money
from private equity, right?
And he understands, like, these players have helped build some conglomerates. And the league always try to come in and give you something that don't make a difference. I'd give a damn if you could tell me I can smoke a joint or not.
People cared, though. Players cared.
They cared it. But, like, right now, you have somebody who was just trying to litigate. Now you got somebody who knows how to tell you, look, I get another $250,000, $400,000 in your pocket. You can go buy whatever the hell you want to buy at that point.
Right.
So I think that is going to be a different little discussion for the league.
I obviously the money is going to be paramount, right?
Yeah.
But specifically to the rebuilt offseason schedule, what do they want that to look like? Like, do we have any information on how it actually shapes up?
I mean, the basics from the players is, they feel like based on the data that they have that it's actually better for players' health to have, one longer ramp up period to the season instead of starting, stopping, starting again with OTAs, having a break, then training camp, then the season. So their hope is, sort of to eliminate some of the stuff in the spring and, start a longer, I guess, training camp type ramp up session. But what's still unclear in all this is, what will be voluntary versus involuntary? Because right now, OTAs are involuntary. The only OTAs are voluntary. The only involuntary part is that a veteran minicamp. So how will they handle that? When would it actually start? How would they actually ramp it up? How would the league adjust the rest of the schedule there out? Because the league's goal ultimately is to make football year round, and it's pretty freaking close to doing that. But how will they sort of adjust some of these things that they have in the spring right now? So yeah, I think that is a big thing for players. But is it close? It doesn't sound like it's close. It sounds like some early, but pretty deep discussions about how can we do this.
I guess we will find out together. Nicki, thank you for the time. I'll
Appreciate
see you tomorrow.
Nick.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Everybody in the stream wants you to drop some bars next time, Nicki.
It's been a while.
They're not ready for that. They're not ready for that.